Summary of Psalms 88 to 93 NLT. Psalm 88. This is a lament where the psalmist, Heman the Ezrahite, cries out to God in despair, feeling overwhelmed by suffering and loneliness. He pleads for God's help, recounting his troubles and asking why God seems distant. The psalm expresses deep sorrow with no resolution of hope or deliverance, emphasizing a sense of abandonment. Psalm 89, a psalm of Ethan the Ezrahite. It begins with praise for God's faithfulness and the covenant made with David. Ethan celebrates God's promises to establish David's throne forever. However, the psalm transitions into a lament, expressing confusion and distress over the apparent failure of God's promises due to Israel's suffering and God's seeming rejection of David's descendants. Psalm 90, a prayer of Moses. This psalm reflects on the eternal nature of God compared to human frailty. It acknowledges the shortness of life and calls for God's mercy, asking for wisdom to live in light of his holiness. The psalmist prays for God to return to his people and to bless them with his favor, that they might rejoice and be glad. Psalm 91. This psalm speaks of God's protection and refuge for those who trust in him. It promises safety from danger and delivers comfort, encouraging believers to seek God's presence as a shelter. It also speaks of God's promises of deliverance from evil and harm, with a focus on his faithfulness. Psalm 92. A psalm for the Sabbath. This one celebrates God's goodness and faithfulness. It praises God for his works and declares the righteous will flourish like trees planted in God's house. The psalm contrasts the fate of the wicked with the thriving of the righteous, concluding with a call to give thanks and praise to God. Psalm 93, a short, triumphant psalm affirming the reign of the Lord as King. It proclaims God's majesty and strength, highlighting his eternal reign over the creation. The psalmist acknowledges the unshakable nature of God's sovereignty and praises him for his authority over the world. These psalms combine elements of lament, praise, and reflection on God's faithfulness, sovereignty, and protection.